Welcome in to the Week 17 episode of Betting the Pitch NFL Edition. I'm your host, Real_G Warner. I am alone by myself this episode. I do have a best bet from _Schnicker, Andrew Schnicker, who's normally my co-host on this show. He's won his last three best bets on our program, so I figured I'd make sure to grab his pick for all of you. And it's a Saturday night, right? The 30th of December. Not a lot going on, fortunately for me, right now. So I figured I'd go live, especially after that incredibly uh, questionable ending of the Detroit Lions and Dallas Cowboys pick. I also went I'm 6-0 my last pregame, six best bets in the NFL, plus 14 units. Or 16 units. So might be a good time to hop on, especially as we go to the playoffs, where I think there's going to be a lot of money to be made. Now, in today's episode, I'm going to go through each of the NFL games for tomorrow. Why not try to offer as much or as little, depending on how interested I am in the matchups. And then would love for someone, if you send something to me and I can see it on StreamYard, that'd be sweet. I don't know if I can see Twitter comments or whatever, but I appreciate if you're following me on the Real_G Warner on Twitter, Instagram, Patreon, anywhere you are. Thank you for the support, and we're going to go really hot and heavy into 2024, assuming I actually get back healthy from the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans. Who knows? I'm staying some voodoo Airbnb. Hopefully, I get to see some spirits or something like that. So we're going to go through. I'll have a best bet end of show, plus Andrew Schnicker's 3-0 the last three episodes. I'm 2-1 in those last three, so I guess I'm only a half game up on the season, but ultimately 5-1 last three episodes will certainly get you down 83%. And we've been rolling in the NFL on my picks on pregame, so I'm going to try to keep that going. So let's start in what is to me the most interesting of all games. For some reason, that's 1 o'clock Eastern time. For some reason, my clocks are still on Eastern time. We got Miami visiting Baltimore, opened with Baltimore 3-point favorite. It's still there, though a little bit more juice. Over under 46.5, and that has not moved. So in terms of injury reports, I really don't believe any sort of reports that come out from any beat writer, Adam Schefter, any sort of thing, coach speak, whatever, they all lie, get fined for it, and all that sort of stuff. So I wait until the inactive reports come out, because honestly, you don't really even know until someone is legitimately ruled out that they will not be playing, performing, and all that sort of stuff. Now, what I do question, though, is the very highly questionable. I mean, when we used to have the previous tags in the NFL with probable, questionable, and doubtful, I see why they did away with that, because it was being abused, but they could still have the same system and just find people if they were lying, a la Bill Belichick. But unfortunately, the highly questionable is the game time decisions that do play. A lot of times they're not even close to their normal level. And so if Waddle, for instance, is in for Miami, that's going to be a problem. I just don't know how healthy he will be. And there's a lot to talk about with this one, especially with seeding in the NFL as well. But I think the biggest thing for me is just Baltimore coming off a huge upset win on Monday Night Football, and then now having to travel across coast from San Francisco back to Baltimore. It is helpful that they can stay in their own beds and they're at home, but it's a little bit different of a scenario. Of course, the West Coast traveling east doesn't do so well for the West Coast teams, but the East Coast teams, I would imagine, if I had the stat in front of me, I would certainly say it. If someone does, please let me know on Twitter at @the_Real_G Warner, or on Instagram, or on Patreon. We'd love to know what that looks like for East Coast teams that are coming off West Coast games. I think a lot of times they lose in the West Coast and they're really looking forward to getting back to the East Coast. So it's not exactly the same example here, but without those stats in front of me, I guess it's really not that relevant. But Baltimore 3-point favorite at home. Basically, I think we're giving 2.5 points, as we have on the podcast all season. 2.5 points for home field advantage. So that says Baltimore slightly better than Miami. I would agree with that, but I actually think I think they're a lot better than that. Miami has looked really good this year against bad teams. They've come off that a little bit lately, but unfortunately, I just don't know necessarily that is something that I would be betting to change, just because I don't really believe in the Miami Dolphins, who they are. Tua Tagovailoa is a great on schedule type of passer. He's great with play design, with a really strong and intelligent coach. I was about to say manager. So busy doing soccer stuff, as you might have seen this Twitter podcast profile a little bit this year. But I just want to look. Yes, they had that nice comeback victory, and Tua got his fourth quarter win total from trailing, at least the comeback victory thing that went up by one. But the Dolphins were ahead of the Cowboys after that awful fumble on the opening drive at the 1 yard line. Dolphins had to lead the whole game, and so to me, it was never really. I did have the Cowboys, so I didn't love losing that one at the buzzer, but kind of felt like it was a really nice thing that the Cowboys were even in that game and were able to take a lead late. And a lot of that was because I felt the Dolphins kind of put they took their foot off the gas, and really I questioned them in close games. So they haven't played a lot of them. We saw this barely winning against the Cowboys at home. And considering the Cowboys had back-to-back weeks on the road, had been playing pretty poorly, blah, blah, blah. We saw the epic collapse against the Titans, a really bad Titans team on Monday Night Football as well. And then they've had a 30-point blowout win against the Jets, 30 points against the Commanders, uh, 21 points. I'm doing math live. Great. Love doing that. To the Jets on the day before Christmas or whatever that Black Thursday, Friday was, whatever day it was. Had a tight win over the Raiders, but that was the Raiders, I think, before they've moved on to Antonio Pierce. Really were not even in the game until late against the Chiefs in Frankfurt. I like there's just so many games that they haven't really been a part of. And I feel like going to Baltimore, yes, there's a huge, like, I guess I should get into the line a little bit, but certainly with the travel, that's an issue. Less rest coming off a Monday night game on the West Coast and that's not a great scenario for Baltimore to be in. But I just don't know where this Miami team is going to stop Lamar Jackson, and then if they are not able to do so, then they're going to have to play in a shootout essentially. I think Baltimore has proven with their defense. Yes, they're maybe fortunate to get some interceptions, potentially baiting Brock Purdy and then potentially making him look like not the MVP candidate that he was currently talked about, or at least at the time was talked about. I feel like there are certainly some flaws in Baltimore. You can always say that Lamar is not the most stable of passers, but is about as elusive as anyone. I feel like he's taken that crown, ripped it away from Russell Wilson. Also does a lot with his legs. And this is a big game for Baltimore. There's not a lot of. I mean, yes, there's always concern that Lamar Jackson might take the week off for the rest of the season, like he did, holding out for his contract. But he got paid, and this is a big game for home field. And the one seed seem to make the NFL Super Bowl every season now, it seems. So this is a really big game, and I expect Baltimore to win. So a 3-point favorite at home. Yes, with all the weird extra points and things and 2-point conversions, et cetera, going on in the league. That's a concern that maybe 3 is not as important of a number, but I do like the push there with the best kicker of all time. Yes, he's got mistakes in him, of course, as do all kickers. It's really just a golf shot, and sometimes you hit into the woods. But I feel like in that sort of realm, I have a lot of faith in Justin Tucker kicking a field goal at the end as the clock expires to get me out of there with a push. So I don't really want this number to climb to 3.5 before this ends up kicking off. And I'm tempted because I've been watching this number all week, waiting for it to hit 3.5. It hasn't done so. I see it at Circa right now with a lot of juice on Miami. And also at Bookmaker at the moment, but pretty much it's a heavily juiced 3 everywhere else. And that's the way I lean, and that's something I'll put on my list as a potential for my best bet end of show. Next, I'll go to New England at Buffalo. Currently, weird way I just said that, but it's 11:36. I guess it's a lot earlier than most of the soccer pods I do, so you're welcome. Hopefully the odds don't come. But it opened a total of 40 with Buffalo 13-point favorites, now climbed to 14, still at 40 as a total. And this is an interesting game for Buffalo because they're basically playing backs up against the wall. They need to win everything, and New England is really just screwing themselves in the pick department. But I think Belichick is also trying to keep his job and maybe his responsibilities as a player finder, evaluator, all those sort of things, which clearly has not been his strong suit over his lengthy and successful New England career. You can argue a lot of that's from exploiting the rules, if you don't want to call it cheating, or a New England Patriots quarterback, famous guy who is taking way less money, and that doesn't really happen throughout the rest of the league. And what it allowed them to do is spend a lot more money on other players around him and made a juggernaut even stronger than the normal salary cap would allow. Now they go to Buffalo, and I have memories of winning a bet, I think, on the Pats when they threw 3 passes in an entire Monday Night Football game. It's I, I guess I could, while I'm doing this live, I might as well check the Buffalo weather. Let's see. Looks like 33 degrees right now tomorrow for this game time. Let's go to 35 with only a 2 mile an hour wind. So that shouldn't be too impactful. Though it does seem like Josh Allen is now playing a very conservative style of football with a new offensive coordinator, Brady, whatever his name is, from LSU way back when, if I'm not mistaken. And New England should not be throwing it at all if they can help it. Turnovers are a big deal for this game. I'm not so much interested in the side here because I do think Buffalo has shown they can blow teams out. It hasn't happened for a while, I don't feel, but this is certainly a team ripe to do it at home against New England, who have very little to play for, besides a lot of NFL players trying to keep their jobs, and so does the head coach. But along those lines, I think I'm most interested in under 40 here. I've not had a lot of luck with totals so far this season. New England, I feel like they really do a great job of turning the ball over in short fields and make unders look like they were godsend, and then all of a sudden blow up like that Denver game going over last Sunday night was absolutely incredible. And I feel for anybody who had that type of number or any sort of number in that game. It didn't really matter what it was. It seemed like it would have lost no matter what. But I'm most interested in under here. The 40 feels high compared to really any total in the NFL this year. I know unders have killed it all season. And of course, there are adjustments made to that as you're seeing 30s and 32s and things. But New England's had, I guess, a better over streak than I think many would have expected, especially after seeing that Pittsburgh Thursday night game go over and almost in the first quarter, it seemed. But I feel like New England has been able to stop the run. Buffalo is running the ball a lot more, and they're barely using Stephon Diggs. Seeing Gabriel Davis with a huge game last weekend was shocking, but he'll do that every month, it seems. So he'll probably go quiet for a little while now. But it just doesn't seem like there are a lot of easy points that are going to be scored here. The wind, I wish, was a little bit worse so we could see some kickers missing kicks. But I mean, I don't even know necessarily if that's a requirement for Nyland, the Patriots kicker, to miss. I would love to put my phone on Do Not Disturb, but I can't seem to find a way to do that. Anyway, fun life I'm living at the moment, but we're live, so I might as well get back to the podcast that we're doing. Okay, so I think I don't really see how this game goes over. I guess turnover, certainly. Josh Allen starts throwing the ball all around the yard, or really what probably happens is New England, as a pretty big underdog, they are competing in this game and scoring points, and then Buffalo need to keep scoring to win the game to stay on the path to the playoffs. Now, that's certainly possible. I don't know necessarily if that's something I'm expecting, or I guess if you're playing a total, you'd be concerned about it. But I just don't. I'm not really that concerned. I guess in general, I feel like under 40 is the way I'd lean. Bills at 9-6, 10-6. I mean, 10-7 probably gets in the playoffs, considering all these teams losing across the AFC. AFC South no longer really a huge threat. AFC North losing a ton besides the Browns, I guess. Chiefs not even looking that comfortable either, and the Bills have the head-to-head because they won in Kansas City. So I think life is looking a lot easier for the Bills. I'm not sure they're going to take this one lightly, but I could see them trying to potentially just take a lead and then really make it hard for the Bills or excuse me, for the Pats to get back into this game. And the Patriots should be losing to try to get better picks. So I think that all kind of points in the under 40 direction. Next, we'll go to Atlanta visiting Chicago. We opened Chicago -2.5, or whoever opened it, total at 37.5. That's since climbed to 38. We still have a 2.5 point spread here, though. Very juicy at Bet Online. Quoted all lines courtesy of Bet Online. My partners, they've been sponsoring this podcast a long time. There's a promo code in the podcast description. If you're not a member there yet, go get a 50% bonus for your first time deposit. Follow the link in the podcast description. If you're watching live on StreamYard, apparently you can't get it there, but just go check out Betting the Pitch on Apple, Spotify, or on YouTube, and you can get your way there. And it will be your thanks to me. If you don't want to leave a 5-star review, though, I would love that. And we'll have my co-hosts, or me, if it's a soccer related question, read it for all the people, I'll shout you out and all that sort of stuff. So go leave a 5-star review. It's huge for the Stern ranking. Anyway, back to Atlanta at Chicago. So Atlanta with a pretty dominant effort last weekend. I was honestly looking at betting Indianapolis, but was pretty concerned that Desmond Ridder was not starting for Atlanta. He's a big problem for them. And they gave the job to Taylor Heineke, as they should have all season. But I guess you got to try to give the young stud that you drafted alongside all of your other offensive pieces that you drafted a chance to make it look like you're a genius, even though your job's on the line. Well, the Falcons currently 7-8 in the NFC South. They're one game behind the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Bucs are playing the Saints, who are 7-8, tied with the Falcons as well. I guess there's maybe some outside playoff hopes here. Lions already clinched. 49ers are in there. I mean, there's a lot of 8 and 7s around. So, I mean, who knows? I'm not doing the math, and I'm not an MSNBC guy that's going to draw a bunch of circles on the telestrator behind me. But I think from this is a really nice situation for the kind of the must-win fallacy, in my humble opinion. So you'll see this especially in college basketball, which I will definitely not lie to you. That's a much stronger sport for me than the NFL. But the must win when you're all these bubble teams that are trying to get into the NCAA tournament or get their resume good enough, they lose all these games against teams they shouldn't because they're ultimately not good enough to make the NCAA tournament and they're struggling to do so. I feel like that kind of fits here in the NFL in the scenario. The Falcons have all the pressure, nothing on the Bears at 6-9, though they're certainly only one game behind the Vikings and Packers in their division. They're screwing themselves in their picks, but I think they're trying to build a future. And certainly that quarterback for Chicago is trying to make sure that he is staying in the Windy City. If he wants to leave, he should be, I guess, he's auditioning for another team as well. But Atlanta, I mean, what we've seen from them is really curious question or decision makings question should be questioned. Their head coach, their offensive players that are all these talented guys have barely played or been used in really weird scenarios, or their tight ends have run jet sweeps instead of using their number 8 overall pick running back. It's just a lot of dysfunction, I think, in the Atlanta organization. And now they go on the road and they're a slight underdog. Right at that, essentially even with Chicago. And I feel like Chicago's been playing a lot better ever since the Sweat trade. They've gotten a much better pass rush, locked him up going forward. And I mean, barring some really awful collapses like we saw against Denver earlier this season, a huge, I think, 28-7 lead, and then their 10-point lead at the Browns. Win those 2 games and the Bears are 8-7, they're potentially in the playoff hunt. So I think this is a very undervalued team that has been playing a lot better. They seem to care, and they don't really have a lot of pressure that Atlanta does, because Atlanta needs to keep pace or potentially could leapfrog their way back into the first place in the NFC South pending tiebreakers if the Saints do win at the Buccaneers on the road. And we'll be certainly going to that game later. I think Chicago at 2.5. I mean, we're seeing it's pretty juice across the board. We do see a 3 at DraftKings, though I'm not in a state that allows me to use them, unfortunately. So I guess I'll just have to use the offshores because they charge a much better price. And by the way, if you're not a member of SportsBetting.ag, check that out. There's another promo code in there. If you're not a bet online, you're not at SportsBetting.ag, go do both of them. The name of this game is having as many outs as possible. So go get your free money, especially BetOnline give you 50%. I think SportsBetting.ag is still giving 100% bonus up to $500. So go deposit $500 and they'll do it twice. So throw $500 in, maybe lose that 1,000, go put 500 more in, and you'll basically get 2,000 for the price of one. So that's huge, and not something a lot of sports books are doing across this landscape. And I've been looking for them because that's unfortunately a big deal in sports betting, is trying to get as many freebies as possible. With that said, back to Atlanta, Chicago. I don't know that I have much of a lean to the total, though I do think that if anything, I would like to bet against the Atlanta offense. Chicago weather report. It's a little bit easier to do this than when we would normally record on Tuesday nights, where we try to predict where the lines are moving. I guess I could do that end of show. It's just give an idea of where I expect the lines to close. But we've seen a lot of the movement, of course, by this point in the week. Looks like 32 in Chicago tomorrow, wind of 13 miles an hour. So that's something. Precipitation only 5%. So there's my weather channel for the night. But I guess I'll be doing a lot of these other games that are of interest. So I think Chicago have the running quarterback. Heineke's certainly mobile, but I don't think he's got as strong of an arm. I think Chicago's got some DJ Moore injury stuff that's a concern, but I think he played a lot of the snaps last weekend. So that's a better sign. And to me, I feel like, yes, I don't love favorites. If you follow any of my podcasts or the sports bets that I make, or follow me on pregame or at Patreon or anything like that, with that said, I feel like Atlanta is a sitting duck here and is getting, I think, too much respect for a team um, that really I think is pretty limited. Yes, they might have a decent run defense, but honestly, I feel like Chicago's a much better team here, playing better, and without the pressure of trying to stay in that playoff hunt in their division because they're so far behind the Lions, who have already clinched. So I think that's all things pointing in the right direction. Chicago's fighting still, so I really like that -2.5. Next, we'll go to Tennessee visiting Houston. Switch back from to the American Football Conference, the AFC. We have what the opener, Houston, I'm a 4.5 point favorite, the total of 43. It's climbed to 44 with the spread now down to -4. I believe CJ Stroud is playing, but again, you never know until the injury inactives come out, in my humble opinion. You never know for sure. You can certainly make assumptions, and there's probably some good value in betting things if you know they're going to happen. But if you get it wrong, you never know, especially the quarterbacks that can go the wrong way really fast. Jaguars, Colts, Texans all tied 8-7. So this is a dogfight, and incredibly, the Jaguars have lost 4 in a row and have come back to the pack. Actually, no one has a winning record in the AFC South, but that should change because they play each other this weekend. I think Tennessee at 5-10, bottom of the division. I mean, Vrabel teams don't seem to quit, but I've had some horrible losses. A missed extra point because Tannehill didn't spin the ball, plus 2 block punts. Not sure, I hope I'll never see that again. The Titans hosting the Colts as an underdog at home, then lost in overtime just by taking the lead. And then also another brutal loss against the Texans, these same Texans, when they tried to rub in the old Oilers history by wearing Oilers uniforms, which was absolutely incredible and so stupid, unfortunately. So that's how I can put some comments in here. If you got some comments, throw them in there. I don't know how to see them, but if you're on StreamYard, which I don't know why you would be, but that'd be cool. See if there's a way for me to pull this up on Twitter while I'm thinking about this. Of course, doing this live, I hope this is entertaining and not boring and making everyone want to sign off the stream, but whatever, we're doing it here. Thank you all for I see 5 of you, so thank you for watching. It's super late at night Saturday. Hopefully people are doing stuff that are more fun than this, but regardless, I think, I mean, Houston, they were very small favorites and were getting disrespected. Played them as the best bet on this podcast at home against the Cardinals when they were really small favorite at home. Barely covered, did not close the closing number, did not cover the closing number. Easy for me to say. I'm tempted to back the Titans here. They were up and dominating this Texans team. It seems like, well, Levis is in, but we'll see with injury reports, as I've already said. I think in Houston, in the Dome, I've been to this game actually before, right around New Year's. They seem to play a lot this late in the season. I guess that was 16 games last time when I was there. Now it's 17, but 18 weeks regardless. I don't know if Tennessee, though, is in a position where I want to back them as a 4-point underdog. I think there's enough questions with Derrick Henry. Almost said Travis Henry. He's probably long since left the NFL. Hopefully, he's still on the earth. And CJ Stroud, when he comes back, he's going to have limited weapons, but Nico Collins is there. Noah Brown should be there. I think Tank Dell is gone for the rest of the season, unfortunately. But I don't like Tennessee in a shootout. I don't think Vrabel wants to play that game, so he's going to probably do his best to keep this as low scoring as possible. That does make me, I guess, point towards under 44. Another feels like a fairly big total, especially because Stroud hasn't played in a while. But that also is what Vrabel desires, wants, all those sort of things. And we know the team's going to fight for him. So unfortunately, that back door for an over is certainly open for the end because Tennessee's going to fight through to the end. I just feel like Tennessee's going to try to win this game and try to play spoiler. I know that's another motivation aspect that I've already talked and touched on a little bit with college basketball reference. Forgive me, this is an NFL podcast, but still, I feel like that's why I like Tennessee, though. I just don't know if it's enough for me to be like, yes, I want to back them, especially after they could not block Cleveland earlier this season. They could not block on punts, of course, against Indianapolis, but really couldn't block this Houston defensive line in the second half. And I don't like, unfortunately, no team is good enough if you can't block a pass rush, because sending 4 and getting home is how you win in this league. Next, go to Las Vegas visiting Indianapolis. Another big game in the AFC South. The Colts at 8-7, as I've already said, tied for the lead. And the Raiders somehow have an outside chance to win the division thanks to a Chiefs tiebreaker because they beat them in Arrowhead last week. Nice. For some reason, my volume's not working very well, so hopefully you didn't hear that too loud. But we opened with a total of 44 that has dropped to 42.5. Indianapolis, a 3-point favorite, is now climbed to -4. A little bit surprising. Vegas, of course, playing on Monday, less rest. Though I guess I don't know if they would have gone home from Kansas City back to Vegas and then gone to Indianapolis, probably. So that's a fair amount of travel. The Colts didn't have to do that, so that's nice for them. This two backup quarterbacks, but one is a 4-point favorite, bigger than the standard 2.5 I'm giving for home teams. Indy was really disappointing at Atlanta last weekend. Jonathan Taylor did return, but literally did nothing. And what was most curious to me was Indianapolis deciding to do a bunch of play action on first down and really throwing the ball, because I am a Jonathan Taylor fantasy owner, was really hoping that they would, I don't know, run him. And they did everything they can, maybe because Zach Moss is out, they seem to have plenty of Trey Sermon on the field as well. So I can't really explain why they did what they did, other than not thinking they could run on the Falcons whatsoever. It's a little bit different with Vegas. I feel like they're better at rushing the passer than they are at stopping the run. But as a 4-point favorite, I feel like where do we get this number? Like, who do the Colts beat handily? Because they barely survived at the Titans when they were a favorite there. And there is some value in this momentum that potentially the Vegas Raiders have. They've been winning a ton of games in a row, won 2 straight, and deserved more than that. If they'd scored 4 points, they would have won against the Vikings at home, which is a really good defense. I think better than what Indianapolis has. I think Indianapolis, it seems like the best thing you do is throw on them. I don't know if I trust Aiden O'Connell at this point, but AOC is slightly better than the bartender who serves in the Congress or House of Representatives or whatever, and has been serviceable and solid. And I don't know that that's much different than we see from Gardner Minshew, who's certainly very limited, as all these backup quarterbacks are. I'm interested in the +4. I think the total I lean under, if anything, but I don't know that I have a huge lean to that, other than just 2 backup quarterbacks that I don't trust to score points. Still in this 1 o'clock window, because we have a million games in this, unfortunately, because the NFL just can't do this, even though they played a game on Saturday, one on Thursday. And I guess with no Monday night, they just couldn't put everyone and mess up America's game of the week, which is actually super lame. So I think there's more interest in this 1 o'clock range. So forgive me, I'm spending a lot of time on it. We get finally the last AFC South team, and they are currently leading division despite losing 4 straight. Are 5-2 on the road are the Jaguars, 3-5 at home, and they have dropped significantly from a 7.5-point favorite at open, very juiced. So you argue that was -7 down to 4 because their quarterback finally is not playing. It looks like CJ Beathard will start. Again, you never know until the inactives come out, but I think that's been everyone will have some huge egg on their face if Trevor Lawrence does play, though he has looked like a game time decision a lot and has played and has been very banged up. I can think of the Saints game and certainly last weekend when they got destroyed by Tampa Bay. But this Carolina team is very interesting. They've been getting a lot of respect in their spreads. And it's been kind of the wise guy number. I mean, Andrew Schnicker, my co-host on this podcast, and I were dueling each other with the Bucks 3-point favorite. He got it, I think, at 5.5. Much better number. Ended up I pushed and he won, so it's nice. I'm glad that we both that we did profit as a podcast. It wasn't the best bet portion of the show, but we do have other bets, surprisingly, in the NFL when we talk about it for 40 minutes a week, but at the very least. But I think Jacksonville, kind of what I talked about with the Falcons, they have a lot of pressure on them at trying to hang on to this division that they are pissing away down their leg, essentially. The Colts and the Texans both have winnable games. Both are favored at home. The Jaguars are at home as well, favored. But Carolina, they've been playing really, really well ever since they decided to move on from their head coach. I see this in other sports and soccer, especially when a team gets relegated and they're done. They seem to start playing really well, play free, play easy. And I feel like that's the side the public does not want to back because, oh, what does Carolina have to play? They've won 2 games this whole season. But at 4 points, I mean, it's certainly Jacksonville's a better team, but how much better with a backup quarterback? They really have struggled to run the ball all season. Carolina's pass defense is supposedly the better side or better part of their defense, but I think a lot of that's because teams have been ahead of them late in games. But I don't think Jacksonville can throw here, so I imagine Carolina can stack the box. Total, I think I forgot to mention, it opened at 39.5. It's down to 36.5. Makes sense with damaged passing game for Jacksonville with Beathard coming in. I don't expect much from him. And Carolina has not scored much at all this season. Yes, you can argue that Carolina line is bad and their skill players are weak, but Adam Thielen's been really good. Jacksonville's lost a bunch of their best players as well. And I think Doug Peterson it's amazing to me the like carnival ride that he is. Not calling him a clown necessarily because I think he was a huge adopter of analytics and has made the NFL what it is today, for better or for worse, I guess. But it's amazing to me how quickly he falls out of favor. Really, I think from a certainly the sharp side is Carolina now 4-point underdog against a playoff team. If the season ends today, who's leading their division, whereas the Carolina Panthers have nothing to play for at 2-13, 0-8 away. But I'm not really picking them to win here. Yes, there's the rule in the NFL where you want to bet a team to win if they're gonna or if you're betting a team against the spread, you really want them to win because dogs are favorites. That's usually how they cover. But there's a little bit of room here. Push on 4 certainly available. That back door is always open. If down 10 late, score a touchdown, might take a field goal, of course, lose by 7, just get it within one possession. But I mean, the Panthers care, and they don't have a first round pick, so I think they're still trying. They traded that away to get their quarterback. We'll see how that worked out, but ultimately, I feel like Carolina's the side I want here. It's the side that I feel like the normal who picks up their phone and doesn't listen to the Betting the Pitch podcast network, especially not the NFL edition every Tuesday night, except for this week. And it's just like, oh wow, I can make some money, or even just I'm down a lot this weekend. I need to make some money back. I'm going to bet the Jaguars either -4 because that's so cheap, or take their money line. I feel like those are in danger right now, and that is a spot I don't want to be in on a Sunday, to say the least. I think Carolina +4 is where I lean in that one. We'll move next to still have way more 1 o'clock games this window. It's about to be midnight here, about to turn to New Year's Eve. So happy almost 2024. We're about 24 hours and 1 minute away. Thankfully, get out of 2023, please. Rams visit the Giants currently, or I guess the Rams open -6. It's still 6. Total is 41. It's now climbed to 43.5. Now, I don't really have a lot to say about this one. Rams coming off extra rest. That helps. Their incredible hot streak that their quarterback's on. That also helps. And the Giants are 5-10, really are just circling the drain at this point. I think there's a huge discrepancy here. The Rams, I mean, they won't need to keep winning to make the playoffs. This is a great spot for them to do so, but that pressure thing it's a privilege to some, but I think it's a really dangerous thing. Though the Rams have been playing so well, momentum's there, 1-2 straight. I feel like they're in good position to not swallow, or excuse me, not choke up, spit up this potential victory. But the Giants, we saw them win as a 6-point underdog at home to the Packers a few weeks ago, though very different quarterbacks between Love and Stafford, of course. But I feel like if anything in this one, I like the home dog just based on the circumstance, but don't really have a lot behind that. I've not really had a great time backing the Giants this year. I think I lost 40-0 on Sunday Night Football in the opener against the Cowboys at home, and then a really poor performance at New Orleans a couple weeks ago as well. Giants are at home though. That's different. As long as they're not playing the Cowboys, I guess. But Rams have been really solid. They, I think, have one of the best coaches ever, potentially in McVay. I hope he doesn't go to the broadcast booth. And I really like the Rams, especially with such low expectations coming into the season. I think they're probably going to win this game, but it might be closer than that 6 suggests. So if you're playing in pools or you want to get a pick on this game, I think you take the Giants. But I don't know if I'm ready to hold my nose for 3.5 hours on Sunday, December 31st, likely at a bar here in Dallas. Moving next to another 1 o'clock. We had 2 more after this one, and then we'll move and we'll quickly get into the late ones. But Arizona visits Philadelphia, opened a 10.5-point underdog with a total of 47.5. The total is up to 48, and Philadelphia is a 12-point favorite. Gigantic number for Philadelphia, who've not been playing well, really struggled with the Giants and struggled to close the game out, potentially just really giving extra lives, and was a very, very dog-friendly Christmas Day last week. I wish I had been involved in more of that, but it is what it is. I think Arizona has shown that they can be competitive. They had that very awkwardly small number on the road at Houston and kind of hung around it and kind of got back inside that number late, if I'm not mistaken. Also played Chicago pretty tight after falling way behind early. I don't know necessarily what the game plan here is for Arizona. They're trying to get rid of Kyler Murray because he's expensive and is I don't know, 5'10" maybe. That's tough for a quarterback in the NFL because he's not going to run forever past everyone. They've given up 403 points this year. That's not great. I guess Commanders have been worse than that, but who's worse than that overall? I think the Cardinals are the second worst in the NFC. Not great. 1-7 away, lost two in a row, 3-12 in the year. And Philly, after Dallas miraculously won tonight, there's some still left in them. They need to win to stay one game ahead of the Cowboys, and then they'll have destiny in their own hands for last week when they play, I think, the Giants again. Nice to play the Giants 2 of your last 3 games, but I think Arizona is a gigantic underdog here. The problem is, and I think historically, double-digit underdogs in the NFL have done really, really well, but we'll see if that's something that continues. I'm not necessarily sure it will. I gun to my head, which thankfully I don't have one. Yes, there are a lot of gun owners in this state, but fortunately I live alone and I don't see anyone right next to me. But I'll take Arizona plus 12. I like I guess along those lines, I don't think they're playing well in a shootout. So you probably want to see under if you want to back the underdog as well. Maybe if you want some action in this game, you go under 48 and plus 12 in Arizona, a little correlated parlay. I don't know if they let that happen, but with same game parlays all the time now across all of these legalized states, who knows what's available? It probably is. Next, we'll go to New Orleans visiting Tampa Bay. Currently, it looks like Tampa Bay opened a 2-point favorite. It's currently 2.5. Total was 41.5 at open. It's now 42. Big game in the NFC South. Again, I don't know why this is all with this huge onslaught of games at 1 p.m. Eastern time, but I guess I'm gonna have to get the bar early because I want to make sure I'm able to watch all these games. Might bring headphones. Probably should charge my phone and I whatever this thing. Apple's not sponsoring me, so whatever it's called. I can't even think of that late. Wow. And I've been talking to myself for a long time. So here we go. Schnicker, I miss you. I wish you weren't drunk right now or something like that, whatever you're doing. Hopefully your wife's tolerating you. But regardless, I think the Saints have really been hard for me to. I feel like they've not been a good team this whole year. I backed them at home against the Jags. That didn't work out. Offense was unable to move the ball. And they're going on the road against one of the hottest teams in all of the NFL. The Buccaneers have won 4 straight, which is incredible for a 4-7 team to do that. Rattle those off, take the commanding lead of the NFC South, though certainly didn't have to go too far to do that. But it's I don't know, like the Bucks were built on a defensive coach, and they've of course had a ton of success with Tom Brady, but Arians left, which I guess was the offensive coach, and the defensive coach took over, and a lot of people thought that would go poorly and Todd Bowles would be gone, but he blitzes a lot and is going to make, I think, New Orleans beat them over with a passing game. I mean, I guess you could dump the ball off to receivers. Olave is more of a deep threat, so I don't think that really fits, and I don't really think he fits Derek Carr either. But a lot of dump offs to Alvin Kamara, who's aging and unfortunately 4 yards at a time. Yes, that will move the sticks, but if they're in a shootout and have to keep up with Tampa Bay, that's going to be hard. Total at 42 doesn't really suggest too much of a shootout, but I think the way Tampa's been playing and at home, they seem to get really small numbers. I mean, Carolina basically being a 3-point favorite on game or 3-point underdog on game day in Tampa a few weeks ago. There's not a huge difference between this number and New Orleans, despite New Orleans being, let's see, 5 games ahead in the standings. So to me, that's not a lot of respect for New Orleans, but I don't really know what to make of that. I think Tampa Bay playing so well, and people are being like, "Oh my God, Tampa Bay!" But they also were an underdog to Jacksonville last week, who've been playing really poorly, had lost 3 straight, and had a quarterback who's barely able to move. So sometimes the NFL, unfortunately, I use this line of thinking in other sports to not take obvious home favorites that are short, but sometimes the NFL just it doesn't seem to the market doesn't seem to want to budge on certain opinions and what they've made of a team. And I think you can make some money in this sport. It's certainly a hard sport to do it, but I think you can make money in this sport by zigging when people zag and just doing a little bit of being willing to kind of put your neck out there and saying, okay, I'll take this price. And if you can beat me, so be it. Certainly will feel weird if New Orleans is controlling this game, but I think the only way they do that is with their defense. And then their offense follows along, or they're really able to keep Tampa Bay quiet. I just think Tampa can move the ball. Mike Evans has been great. Godwin has been catching a ton of balls lately, not getting a ton of yardage or fantasy points, unfortunately, to my chagrin. But also Rachaad White's been great running the balls too. And I don't mean to only speak skill players, but the easiest ones to come off the top of my head. And I just feel like Tampa Bay at home, basically these two teams are even with this number at 2.5. And I'm interested there in terms of the total. I don't know necessarily that I have a great feel for that. Though I think New Orleans wants a low scoring game if they're going to win this. So that might fit into kind of potentially an under here, since Tampa is probably going to try to win a game, giving up a few points to New Orleans as well. In terms of the juice across, looks like it's pretty much split -110 both ways across all of the landscape. So that's good. Maybe a little bit more juice on the New Orleans side at bookmaker, but um, I mean, it's basically pick who you think is going to win this game, and I think it's going to be Tampa Bay. And finally, for the last 1 o'clock window, we got San Francisco also going east off of that Monday night shellacking disappointment, of course. I think Purdy's in for this one. We opened a 13.5 point favorite, did San Francisco, not we. Total at 48 has climbed to 49.5, and the spread is now at 14. It's a really great spot to back Washington. Yes, the 49ers should be motivated, but they have to go win by a lot of points in a early time zone, coming off a really tough performance when the quarterback was really awful. And I mean, maybe a confident Brock Purdy's not going to be shaken, but you really never know. And at this point, I mean, it should be Jacoby Brissett. I don't know if that's been announced yet. And unfortunately, we never know until injury report, or really with quarterbacks when they're both active, you probably won't know until who's taking the first snap. And if Howell is inactive, then something really bad happened in the locker room, most likely. I don't know what number I'd want to get in the way with San Francisco. I did back Baltimore Monday night last week, and that was awesome. Was a little bit scary early, but ultimately ended up working out. I think I'm looking to really primarily fade San Francisco with really good teams. Washington is not one of them. And when you get that big price like 14, yes, I do think double-digit dogs do really well in the NFL historically. I just don't know, because I feel like if they fall behind, I don't know how Washington gets back into this, and I just don't know how Washington stops San Francisco. Because Christian McCaffrey's been awesome, leading fantasy teams to 60% of championships or something like that across ESPN, which is hilarious. Literally, just get a first or second pick and you're in the finals. Basically, brutal. But I don't know that Washington is really the side that I'd like to put my neck out 2 games in a row against San Francisco, that potentially they fire off a really good performance here. Though I could see it certainly not happening. Finally, for the late afternoon window, 4:05 Eastern time, we'll go to Pittsburgh, we'll go to Seattle, Pittsburgh visiting Seattle. Spread open 3.5. Seattle 3.5 point favorite. Total at 41. That total is down to 40.5, and the spread is up to 4.5. I don't know who started for Pittsburgh. Never seem to know these things, but not a huge improvement, I think, from Kenny Pickett to Mason Rudolph. Rudolph's been around longer, so I trust him more. Pickett's been awful, and they win in spite of him, despite him, in spite of him. Seattle also questions about Geno Smith's health, but he has been able to move the ball, and has had a great career renaissance. I think the spread climbing, I don't really know necessarily why that is. It's a little bit high for me to back a favorite at 4.5, because that's saying essentially Seattle's 2 points better than Pittsburgh. A lot of room for 4 and 3 point losses to cover that spread, and still feel like you are very disappointed when Seattle's celebrating at the end. My favorite thing has been an underdog. They don't win straight up, but they cover the spread, and they are very angry at the end. The home team, or usually the favorite, is usually the home team, but the favorite is celebrating their victory, but it wasn't by enough to satisfy Vegas, and that's my favorite. But I do have that sort of feeling here. Pittsburgh, I mean, they're going to try to keep this as low scoring as possible. Who knows if what we saw last weekend for George Pickens is going to happen again. But Seattle, they're a little bit weird as a home favorite. I think as a 3 point favorite, they're very interesting to me, though I'd certainly question why the number is so low. It's going to be a weird environment for Pittsburgh on the road. The crowd noise does make an impact. I feel like that's really what home court or home field advantage in the NFL is if you got to put your opponent on a silent count. LA teams can't, Vegas teams can't do that. The single Vegas team can't. But Seattle should be able to, and I think that will make a Pittsburgh quarterback room even less likely to have success out there. As for a total 40.5, I mean, Seattle is a team that wants to score a lot to get you up there. I think Pittsburgh makes them play that game. So I think I might like Pittsburgh under 40.5 a little bit more than I like the side. Next, go to Cincinnati visiting Kansas City, what everyone was expecting to be the game of the year. And now we got Jake Browning and a disastrous Chiefs team. But it is interesting because both these teams have something to play for. And all of a sudden, things are not great for Taylor's boyfriend and the media circus that's following Kansas City. I don't think it's just Travis Kelce's fault. I think he's older, but also is not catching the ball, so that could be a focus thing. Maybe not as much time to run routes with Patrick Mahomes. Instead, he's doing Pfizer commercials or whatever, 2 at once, but not talking about threesomes, because apparently that is a joke I've been waiting for of second version of that commercial to come out, and it hasn't. Thank you for the people sticking with it. 44 minutes of just live spewing spit on my mic and ultimately trying to figure out what the heck I'm going to talk about without my co-host here, unfortunately. But opened at Kansas City 7-point favorite. A lot of juice on Cincinnati. Total at 45.5. It's down to 44. That total is, and the spread is 6.5. How do we find a way to back Cincinnati here? That's the biggest question. I don't know that I can understand Kansas City laying this much, but then we saw the second coming of Jake Browning. He was so bad at the beginning of the year. Then Burrow came in. Then Burrow got hurt. Browning was really good for a couple of weeks, and then the lipstick came off the pig, and it came off really quickly. Kansas City, they've got so many problems. Patrick Mahomes always makes big mistakes, or had when he was on really good teams. Now he doesn't have guys to get open and looks super frustrated. I feel like that honestly might make Las Vegas look a little bit better than they actually are, because Kansas City's problems are just so significant at this point. KC defense was supposed to be this really great unit that was going to win them games and championships potentially, filling in for that offense. That certainly has that ship has sailed or quieted a little bit. The pass rush is about all they got. Cincinnati really hasn't stopped the run, but Pacheco injuries, and then who knows, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they've been trying not to use forever. CH is a lot easier to say, so I'll keep doing that. There's a lot of things pointing to Cincinnati. I think I'm waiting to see if the 7 comes back. I don't know that I want to buy this number to it. At 6.5, I might be able to skip, but definitely would be very upset with an 8-point Kansas City win if I do get it on the 7. But I think there's a good chance this is a close game. I went to Arrowhead earlier this year and saw Kansas City really struggle with Denver before. I think it was the weekend after Denver had given up 70 points. I just don't see Kansas City scoring a lot here. Cincinnati's probably best in their pass rush, but that requires some third and longs or second and longs or obvious passing downs. And Cincinnati's rush defense is going to have to make that happen. So we'll see how that goes in terms of what Cincinnati's playing for. They are currently 8-7, as everyone is over 500 in the AFC North. Awesome, good for them. Hopefully, it seems like that happens every year. Bengals, so they still have a playoff idea in mind. Certainly, a win here over Kansas City would throw the AFC West into rapture. 9-7 Chiefs would be a very interesting team, especially because they look like they're a playoff-bound team, but certainly not worth the name or decal that's on the side of their helmets. I guess I like fading Kansas City here, so I like Cincinnati. I just don't have the 7 yet. I guess along those lines, maybe I like the under 44 if Cincinnati's offense doesn't show up to play. Still waiting for Kansas City to wake up, but I feel like we might be waiting until 2024, which is a couple of days from now, but really the 2024 season. Last but not least, in that late window, the Chargers visit Denver. We had a 6.5 open. Denver minus 6.5 is with a total of 38. Is dropped to 36.5 as a total, and the spread is now 3.5. I think because Russell Wilson is not starting. Chargers with a great performance after an embarrassing performance, got their guy finally fired. And it was a loss, so it was really good for them and their seek of a potential pick or high pick to help Justin Herbert out. But Easton Stick's not going to be able to do much. Chargers haven't been able to run the ball at all, so it's going to be a quick dump off offense. I'm not really sure that's going to do well in the year of our Lord 2023, soon to be 24 in the NFL. The Broncos also haven't been able to run the ball much, had that crippling loss to New England, and are now in really big trouble trying to make the playoffs. But I guess it's possible if they went out, get to 9-8. Who knows? A lot of teams are going to lose in this range. Though the nice part, kind of like I talked about earlier, the pressure's on Denver here. The 3.5-point favorite, though, that number is pretty small. I just don't know that I believe in the Chargers at all to want to play this number. Certainly the sharp side and the side I would want. In theory, I just don't know if that's really where I want to be, though 36.5 does feel like there's going to be not a lot of scoring here, considering how much the Broncos struggled to move the ball with Russell Wilson at the helm. Now going to a backup quarterback. Still not expecting a lot of points here. At altitude, maybe that impacts the game a little bit, but I don't know. I just don't think either of these offenses do much. And I think you could say that across the board with the NFL. Totals come down 1.5, so that's saying something that people aren't believing the offense. But I think that's also a reaction to a quarterback change, an unexpected one, and one that was not chosen. So we'll see how that ends up going as I'm getting notifications when I told them to turn off. Last but not least, the Sunday night football game. We have Green Bay at Minnesota. Currently I guess it opened Minnesota a 1.5 point favorite. They're still a 1.5 point favorite. Opened 43.5 for a total. It's now down to 43. So we've had a little bit of movement. And this is a big game in the NFC North. Not a lot to play for because the division's already wrapped up. Both these teams are 7-8, and it's probably a play out. Maybe a loser leaves town match, as I think some other podcasts you might listen to have said that are gambling related and have someone hopefully as funny as I am. Just kidding. But Green Bay, Jordan Love, had a really nice run for a little while, ended by Tommy Cutlets or whatever in New York on that Monday night. Minnesota, they're on their millionth quarterback after Nick Mullins clearly was not the option. I backed Minnesota last weekend. They're in great position to cover the spread or win the game, and did neither. Brutal, but that's what happens when you throw a wounded duck instead of getting a line drive pass to Justin Jefferson to win the game for like the third time. But I guess you got to give credit to Minnesota for hanging with a Detroit team that's been really good and proven that they are worthy of the playoffs and probably were worthy of a win tonight, Saturday night, if the refs could hear. But I probably shouldn't get into that controversy because Roger Goodell has friends in high places, and I might be arrested soon. If you don't see me tomorrow, it's because I spoke ill about the league that has sponsored everything in our world. But regardless, I like the home team. The home field advantage in a whiteout last week against Detroit. I don't know how much of a difference that made, but Detroit's a much better football team than Green Bay. And I feel like there's a lot of respect here for Green Bay, and I don't really get it. Minnesota, I mean, it's probably their quarterback situation that keeps this number so small. They haven't really been able to run the ball too much. That's been a problem, though. I think Green Bay is a little bit easier to run on than Detroit. And Green Bay was so good in the last few years because they could run the ball. They were kind of hiding Aaron Rodgers, and they controlled the ball and didn't score a lot of points, or really didn't allow the teams they were facing high times of possession. So they didn't score a lot of points or didn't allow a lot of points. So I guess that makes me like under 43 here. I feel like most of these totals, I don't have a huge eye into where these are going to go. Probably based on the numbers and how they've moved so far. I imagine they continue in those directions, but it is an over and favorites betting world that we live in. So a lot of times I wait for my underdogs and my unders till the buzzer or till the kickoff. I think for this last game, I'm interested in Minnesota. I do want to have some sort of faith in their quarterback situation. I'm not sure I do. Yes, it's a tiny spread delay. But considering I generally consider a home field advantage overrated in the NFL, certainly not that 3 anymore. 2.5 seems it might be a little steep. I'm not sure that's for me at this point. So I think I'm gonna hold off and try to get some feelings about Minnesota tomorrow. But check in with me in a little while when this podcast finishes uploading, and maybe I've changed my mind by then. I do really like the card as part of why I did this late night episode by myself. Also want to get one out for everybody as I plan to keep doing this with Andrew Schnicker next to me for the playoff time. But it might be time to run through where I expect these lines to move. Might be an embarrassing feature. Certainly, we'll see how that goes. And if anyone wants to slide in my DMs, real_G Warner, Instagram, on Patreon, or on Twitter, go ahead and we can certainly discuss. I don't know. Let me actually check to see if I have any comments that have come through. I don't think that there's a way to see it, but someone's still watching me, so thank you for doing that. So for Miami, Baltimore, I like Baltimore -3. I imagine this one might hit 3.5 on game day. Just too much money coming in, pulling that Baltimore number. So it might be one, if you like it, you might want to lock it sooner rather than later, or live with 3.5 and buying it down to 3 potentially tomorrow to save yourself when they win by 4. It doesn't matter, or something like that. New England, Buffalo, I like under 40. Not sure the totals are my favorite or expertise at this point. Chicago -2.5. That looks like that's getting a little bit of money bet on the favorite. So it might be one of those numbers you might want to take sooner rather than later. I do like that side. I like Chicago. Tennessee, Houston. I like Tennessee a little bit, but not sure it's really close to being on my list. Las Vegas at Indianapolis. I like Vegas, but I'm a little bit worried, especially after talking about Kansas City, that it might just be a Kansas City thing and not a Vegas thing. Though Indianapolis laying 4 points seems very high to me. Also like under there, I guess, along those lines. Carolina at Jacksonville. I like Carolina's sharp side +4. I also like under 36.5. I think those work pretty well together. Rams visiting the Giants. I don't really want to do too much of this one, but if you got to pick this one for a pool or something like that, I like the Giants getting 6. Arizona at Philadelphia. I like the idea of Arizona, but I don't think I will execute that or play with it. I think Philly are a team I want to see win big so we can bet against them in the future. Probably not the Giants next week, but likely in the first round of the playoffs that they will play. New Orleans at Tampa Bay. I like Tampa giving 2.5 right now. Looks like it's not a spread you need to make any moves on just yet. I'm interested to see if this does climb towards 3 tomorrow. Certainly 2.5 is better than 3. But I'm the type that likes to play the -3 rather than paying the juice to get down to 2.5. So we'll see how that goes. And that probably does give me an idea for that Chicago number that's potentially moving to 3. I might just wait for 3 and play a low juice number. Maybe it gets a little bit better juice at 2.5 as maybe some unexpected Atlanta money comes in. San Francisco at Washington, great spot for Washington. I think if you like +14, you probably want under 49.5. Pittsburgh going to Seattle in the late window. Don't have a lot of interest in this one, but I think under 40.5 would be my lean that Pittsburgh gets their way in point scoring, or maybe just don't score enough to send it over. Cincinnati at Kansas City, I like the road dog, want to see 7. Also like under 44 right now. Just feel like betting against Patrick Mahomes seems like a good idea at this point. Not against him necessarily, though he does make mistakes, but I think it's just generally like the clout that he has is still so significant. Chargers at Denver. I like under 36.5 there. Don't know if I really want to get too involved. The two teams, I guess Denver's still thinking that they might have a playoff shot, so they're still going for it. But Sean Payton should probably be even more conservative with a backup quarterback this time than he was before. Green Bay at Minnesota. Like I said, I like Minnesota -1.5 at home and under 43. I am concerned, though, the Minnesota quarterback situation is probably too dire for me to back that favorite. But maybe that under 43 might be a little bit more interesting. So I guess, I've gone through everything I could, every game, line by line, total and spread. Hopefully that is good enough for you. And if you're watching this Sunday morning, as it's Sunday morning now, if you're watching live, but hopefully this will be up and you can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on YouTube if that's of interest to you. And leave a 5-star review. It's huge for the search rankings. I already mentioned Bet Online and SportsBetting.ag. Stick around. I'm about to do the ultimate best bet portion, which will get cut up and put on the various channels. But all I can say is if you don't have a lot of outs, if you have a bookie or you have one sports book or you play DraftKings or whatever you have in your local legalized state, check out the links in my podcast description, both the Bet Online and to SportsBetting.ag. It's best spot to get free money. I would take that, and they're great, better juice than you'll see on any of these sports books, and they don't report stuff to the taxes. It's up to you. And I probably should say some disclaimer like, oh, all gambling advice is recreational, of course. Recreational, everyone, recreational. That's what we're doing here, just recreation, because life is just fun. We're not trying to do things that a society would potentially keep you from doing that doesn't harm other people and yourself. But other than that, if you're not a member of my Patreon, check it out, patreon.com/real_Warner. That's where you can get all this information before it goes live out to the world. You get all my picks, leans, write-ups. You can even download the app, turn on notifications. You get a little buzz every time I lock something in because I try to make sure I buzz everyone. Almost said something I probably shouldn't, but try to buzz everyone every time I put something in. So across all the sports, so you're not missing out on anything. You get the lines I get. That's generally what I'm suggesting. Get as many outs as possible. Follow those links. Get on my Patreon so you know what I'm playing when I'm locking in right away, and you can enjoy all that I'm going, and you can even ask me questions. And if you feel like my play on St. Bonaventure today wasn't as sharp and that the numbers were coming against us, like my guy Sor Dinero did today, you can certainly ask me out, and I will answer your questions as soon as I see them, pretty much. So that's one thing that Patreon does offer that pregame doesn't, unfortunately, is that I can interact with you much more quickly. It's a lot easier for me to do with an app that I get a notification when something's said to me, or you get something when I post something. It's very easy. So check it out, patreon.com/thereal_G Warner, and I tell you the price is very friendly. I'll leave it that way. So. And I do have a pick for Andrew Schnicker, so I might as well get into it. This is the real_G Warner on Instagram, Patreon, and on Twitter. And this is the Betting the Pitch NFL edition best bet portion of the show. We've been really hot lately, 5-1 in our last 3 episodes, including Andrew Schnicker, who's not with me tonight, but he did send in a pick. He's 3-0 his last 3 picks. I'm just 2-1, lowly 67%. But I'm going to catch up, but I'm actually rooting for us both to go 2-0. For his best bet, he's going with a sharp side, New Orleans Saints +2.5 on the road at Tampa Bay. Probably will wait on that one. Want to grab 3 if that's potentially available later. But for now, 2.5 is what he's going with. And I'm going to go with making me feel a little bit weird, but I really like Justin Fields, 2.5 point favorite. The Chicago Bears are at home right now to Atlanta. I think this is a great spot for Atlanta, who have a lot of pressure to try to stay in a playoff race. Bears have nothing to play for, just auditioning for jobs, and I much prefer that side of the coin than the other. So take the Saints plus 2.5. Andrew Schnicker, _SCHNITKER's best bet, and I'm going with the Chicago Bears minus 2.5 for this episode. And that'll do it for this episode of Betting the Pitch NFL Edition. Thank you for tuning in and hanging with me late night. Hope you all have a great evening, a great New Year's. 2024 will be much better than the last. And I am looking forward to potentially stacking some paper tomorrow. So talk to you all then, and slide us the DMs. Hit me up if you got any questions. I'm happy to say anything you'd like. If you like what I did tonight, please let me know, and maybe we'll get more of these.